Picture this. You striding into the exam hall like the linguistic EAMS navigator that you are. But hey, it's not just about surviving. It's about thriving, like a caffeinated unicorn in a field of grammar. In this ultimate arsenal of wisdom, we're making stress do the cha-cha-cha with eustress, diving deep into the EAMS Formula for optimal exam performance. Still working on an acronym for that one. And sprinkling exam day tips like that confetti. So gear up and remember, it's not just about the pen and paper. It's about your poetic prowess in the face of the tick-tick-tick-tick-tick-ticking clock.
Everything you need to easily pass English ATAR. English ATAR made simple. Powered by Saints Coaching.
Yeah, so this is the second last lesson of Module 6 and the entire bloody course. That is impressive. If you're watching this, that means you would have just completed the previous lesson, review the trial run. The lesson before that, the trial run. And the lesson before that, the EAMS exam strategy. If you're still with me, if you've just completed the review the trial run lesson, that means you've just completed the last activity for English ATAR Made Simple. That is another huge bloody accomplishment. I promise you the effort you've put into this entire course will pay off in the exam and your life after high school. Mainly because you've proven to yourself that 1, you can set a goal, and 2, implement habits to go out and achieve that goal. My belief is that if you can do that in life, you can achieve anything. So bear that in the back of your mind as we go through this second last lesson. Think about how far you've come and think about everything that you've done to get here and how much it's going to help you moving into the future. Speaking of this lesson, these exam day tips could well be the most practical things we can learn in this entire course. With the notable exception of Module 1, all of the content in this entire course has been teaching you the need-to-know content from the English ATAR syllabus. It's all well and good to understand that content, but if you're not in the right frame of mind come exam day, that content won't be of much use. You'll be too stressed to apply the stuff you've learned, and the exam will not go to plan. It goes without saying that is the last thing we want. With that being said, this lesson is designed to help you get into the best frame of mind, and that's because they've personally helped me. I believe they can also do that for you. Let's take a look at our lesson objectives. As I alluded to in this introduction, we'll be discussing stress in this lesson. That discussion will mainly center around this explanation of the difference between eustress and distress. From there, we'll underscore the EAMS Formula for optimal exam performance. Then we'll get to the meat of the lesson, what we're here for, the exam day tips. All that's left to do after that is our simple summary. Nice and short. Let's just get stuck into it. What is the difference between eustress and distress? Basically, they're types of stress. Eustress is good stress. Distress is bad stress. The fact that there's such a thing as good stress might come as a surprise to you because it's so easy to associate this word stress with something negative. But bear with me. Here's a list of characteristics that are commonly associated with each form of stress. Eustress. It's motivational and energizing. It gets the people going.
But it's provocative.
No, it's not. It
Gets the people going.
Distress is anxiety-inducing and draining. Eustress is short-term. Distress can be short-term, but it can also be long-term. Eustress is associated with feeling nervous yet excited. Distress is associated with feeling overwhelmed and incapable. In short, eustress is performance enhancing, while distress is performance diminishing. I'll be taking the performance enhancing, thank you very much. So this leads us to a key takeaway. You can't eliminate stress full stop, but you can control which type you feel. So that's great, but how? I've been waiting for you to ask this question. By implementing the EAMS Formula for optimal exam performance and exam day tips. Well, I guess we better take a look at that formula. Best segue of the entire course? Maybe? I don't know. Let's just get straight into this formula. Firstly, it starts with eating, then sleeping, and then exercising. I'm going to be real with you. The nature of your relationship with these 3 things can make or break your entire exam performance. It is as simple as that. The application of what I'm about to show you is as follows. Remember, it's in the title of the thing. It's the formula you should follow while you're training for and in the middle of an exam period. So when it comes to eating, the first element of this formula, I suggest you eat 80% whole foods. What are whole foods though? They're foods that have no or minimal processing. The main types of whole foods are fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grains, meat, fish, and eggs. With that in mind, this aspect of the formula says, of all the food you eat in a given day, try to make 80% of that whole food. As for the remaining 20% of what you eat, that can be whatever. Indeed. Next aspect of this formula is sleep. This part of it says you should sleep at least 7 hours each night. This right here, arguably the most important point in the entire lesson. Time in bed does not equal time asleep. I could get into bed at 10 p.m., but if I'm on my phone just scrolling in a scroll hole, I'm trapped. I cannot escape. I might not actually fall asleep before 11:30 p.m. Then if I wake up at 6 a.m., that means I've been in bed 8 hours but only been asleep for 6.5 of that at best. If you're spending an hour and a half every night before you go to bed on your phone while you're in bed, factor this in. Final thing we're talking about here is exercise. I suggest you exercise for at least 30 minutes daily. By the way, this can be any form of exercise. Walking, running, yoga, weight training, rock climbing, whatever. Choose the type you enjoy doing most because you're most likely to stick with it over the long run and just do it daily. Okay, this is the formula in words, but let's see what it looks like as an equation. I love when we can simplify English through equations. Oh, off the charts on the nerd meter. Good one. In the spirit of this nerd meter and this formula for optimal exam performance, the first thing we're looking at is eat 80. This refers to the fact that you should try to eat 80% whole foods every day. The next element of the formula is sleep. Specifically, sleep 7 hours each night. Remember, time in bed doesn't always equal time asleep. Third element of it is the exercise, specifically 30 minutes per day of an exercise you like doing. So if you can eat 80, sleep 7, and exercise 30, you are dramatically improving your chances of reaching or being in an optimal state for your exam performance. Another way to think of all of this is that your mind and body are like a car. Eat 80, sleep 7, and exercise 30 are what you need to do every day so your car can get from point A, which is the point at which you start a task, all the way to point B, which is the point at which you complete a task. The following exam day tips are like car accessories, such as leather seats, tinted windows, and a subwoofer. They will undoubtedly make the trip better, but there's no point buying them if the car can't get from point A to point B in the first place. Okay, what does all of that mean? Basically, make sure your car can run smoothly by giving it, firstly, enough fuel, enough rest, and enough movement. Once the car has those essentials, then and only then can you add the accessories we're about to discuss. Those accessories are these exam day tips. I am not happy. I just filmed a whole section of this lesson and the bloody recording software didn't work. Round 2. Before we take a look at these exam tips, a quick reminder. I'd like you to bear in mind how they might help you enter this state of good stress that we're after. Number 1, don't study the night. What? Number 2, wake up before 7 a.m. Number 3, don't study on exam day. Number 4, arrive at the exam venue at least 30 minutes before it starts. Yeah, that one checks out. Number 5, be a loner immediately before the exam. What is going on? Let's just look at number 1 first. Don't study the night before the exam. This tip assumes 2 things. 1, that you've completed all the prior lessons, and 2, you've completed all the prior activities up to this point. In other words, it assumes you are prepared for the exam. That's what needs to have happened for this tip to apply to you. Here's an explanation as to what it's all about. But first, we're going up. I'm bringing back the energy after my recording failure. Desk. Go. Hey buddy, let's do it. If you've got a standing desk, I would love for you to join me. Okay, what's this one all about? If you're already prepared for the exam, reward yourself for all the hard work you've done. Chuck on a series and get an early night. But if you can't stand the idea of doing something unproductive the night before an exam, guilty as charged, consider reading over one or more of the following. Number 1, the goal you set in Module 1. Number 2, the text types you completed in Module 2. 3, the EAMS exam strategy. 4, the overarching feedback for the trial run page. And lastly, these exam tips. A few notes about this tip. In order for you to fully understand what this means, we really need to know what the word study means. Otherwise, we could be studying and not knowing it, or trying to study and not knowing it. I understand studying as actively performing a task to develop a skill. For example, completing the trial run developed your exam writing skill. So completing the trial run is an example of studying. An example of what studying isn't. Reading over your notes. It's passive and it is not studying. If you're feeling unprepared, we've all been there. You can study the night before the exam, provided doing so won't interfere with the EAMS Formula for optimal exam performance, or EFOP. For example, I do not recommend you study if that means you would be getting less than 7 hours of sleep the night before an exam. Sweet. That is tip number 1. Tip number 2, wake up before 7 a.m. This tip assumes the following. You've had at least 7 hours of sleep. Your exam is at 9:20 a.m. Every WACE exam that's assessed your syllabus has been at 9:20 a.m. And you've established and practiced your pre-exam routine before completing the trial run per guideline number 5. That's what this tip assumes. Here is an explanation as to what it's all about. In short, being in a rush is a surefire way to enter a state of distress. We don't want that stress. So this tip helps you go on autopilot before the exam and preserve that precious mental energy. Ultimately, this tip helps you enter a state of the good stress we want. Note, waking up before 7 a.m. isn't a strict rule. Rather, what I'm talking about is what this symbolizes. Knowing how long it takes you to complete your pre-exam routine and waking up on exam day at an appropriate time in light of that knowledge. Essentially, if you know beforehand that it takes you exactly 2 hours and 35 minutes to do all the stuff you want to do from the moment you wake up to the moment you get to the exam hall, you can use that knowledge on the exam day, and that means you don't have to rush. You're going to rock up feeling happy as Larry or Loretta. Know how long it takes you to do your morning routine. Use that knowledge to your advantage come exam day. Tip number 3, don't study on exam day. What? This tip assumes the following. Oh, no prerequisites. That's awkward. This tip applies irrespective of when your exam starts and how prepared you are for it. Here is my reason why. Remember, studying has the following definition. Actively performing a task to develop a skill. Here's the kicker. If you study on exam day, you are subconsciously telling yourself, I have not developed the skill or skills necessary to complete this exam. Is that thought going to help us enter a state of eustress? I don't think so. Okay, so what can or should I do on exam day? If you want to do something, read the following. The goal and habit contract you completed in Module 1. That's essential reading. And it's at number 1 for a reason, the most important of all the things you could read on exam day. Reading this goal and habit contract immediately before your WACE exam is the perfect opportunity to reflect on how far you've come since you started this journey, since you signed that document. When you reflect on everything you have achieved, the exam looks pathetic in comparison. It is just 3 hours of writing under time conditions, and you have done plenty of that. As you read through your goal and habit contract, I want you to focus on the goal you set. Let's say it's to achieve a scaled English ATAR score of 58%. Then I want you to visualize yourself in the exam room completing an exam that will get you to that overall score of 58%, or whatever your goal is. This small visualization exercise is so powerful because it tells yourself that you are capable of achieving this goal. Yeah, this might sound silly, but let me ask you this. If you can't see yourself actually achieving that goal, do you even have a goal, or is it just an unattainable dream? So read your goal, remind yourself that it's achievable, visualize what achieving it in the exam room looks like, and then just go and do the damn thing. Next piece of essential reading is the overarching feedback for the trial run page you completed from the previous lesson. Final essential piece of reading is the EAMS exam strategy. The last piece of reading, which is not essential, is the text tables you completed in Module 2. Only do this if you've got heaps of spare time before the exam and you feel like doing something productive. Note. Also remember from tip 1, reading over content is passive and therefore it does not mean studying. Tip number 4, this one is a big one. Arrive at the exam venue at least 30 minutes before it starts. I'm not going to mess around here. No prerequisites for this one. It applies irrespective of when your exam starts and how prepared you are for it. This is a must. Okay, so if we're on the same page about that, what is the rationale behind this? Firstly, this stuff came out of the handbook that gives you all of the need-to-know information about WACE exams. Relevantly, supervisors will instruct candidates, to enter the examination room approximately 20 minutes before the prescribed start time. This means the supervisors will start calling you in at 9 a.m. If you arrive 30 minutes before the exam starts, which is at 9:20 a.m., you get there at 8:50 a.m. This gives you 10 minutes to just sit, relax, chill out before you start getting called in. Like we discussed in tip number 2, this tip helps you not feel rushed on the day of the exam, which in turn reduces the possibility of you entering a state of bad stress. I learned this tip the hard way. Please do not make the mistake I did. I was doing a summer unit way back at the beginning of 2017. We had a final exam for it. It was around the end of January. I was running late. I think the exam started at 1 o'clock. You're allowed to take in as many notes as you want for law exams, and for some reason, I did not print off my notes before the day of the exam. So that was something I had to go and do. I go to Officeworks, print off my notes. I'm driving down Mounts Bay Road, and it's like 12:50 and the exam's starting in 10 minutes. I get to UWA and I'm trying to find a park, and for some reason, despite the fact that it is summer holidays and not many people are actually at uni except nerds like me doing summer units, the car park was full. So I eventually find a spot, but then notice this hive of bees hovering around the bloody parking meter. Correction, it was at least 2 or 3 hives. It was comical. It was something you would see in a cartoon, just how many bees there were hovering above this bloody meter. So I was like, no, I would not like to go to that one. So I keep driving around. For some reason, that spot was the only one that remained free for about 5 minutes. At this point, it was about 12:59. And this exam was starting at 1 p.m. on the dot, not the reading time or anything. Boom, you start writing in like 1 minute, 30 seconds. I admit defeat. I have to find a park somewhere. I can't just leave it in the middle of the road. So I go and park next to the parking meter with all the bees. I am somehow trying to cover myself with shorts and a t-shirt while I'm putting some coins. Yes, they actually existed then. In the meter, get the ticket. I'm running, put the ticket on the dashboard, grab my notes, start running. Then as I'm running, I feel like something tingling in my shirt. I look down and just see this bee hanging off my chest. And I kind of instinctively just pick away at it. I run into the exam hall. It's like 1:05. I've missed 5 minutes of my exam. One of the supervisors sees I'm clearly distressed, and doesn't really question what's just happened to me. It's kind of like, oh God, I don't even want to know. Here you go. And I go and sit down. I write my name and I'm like, wait, do I? Like my chest feels funny. And the actual sting is implanted in my chest. I'm like, okay, I was just stung by a bee on my heart. Cool. So one hand is removing the sting, like as I pull down my shirt, and the other hand is trying not to shake as I try and write my name on the front page of this exam paper. And then I proceed to spend the next 1 hour and 50 minutes writing an exam about company law. All of that is to say, don't make the mistakes I did. Arrive at the exam venue 30 minutes before it starts, please. Okay, I hope you enjoyed my story. A note, make sure you consider the traffic conditions of commuting to the exam venue for an 8:50 a.m. arrival. If the exam venue is at your school, chances are you're used to getting to school earlier and therefore used to slightly different traffic conditions. This might seem like a really granular point, but trust me, it can make a huge difference. Depending on where you live, it can be a matter of like 20, 30 minutes. Anyway, that is food for thought, and this is our final tip, tip number 5. Be a loner immediately before the exam. Prerequisites, there are none. This applies regardless of 1, when your exam starts, and 2, how prepared you are. Here is what I suggest you do regarding this tip. Once you arrive at the exam venue, find a spot to sit by yourself and listen to some happy songs. Ensure you can still see the exam venue so you know when supervisors start instructing candidates to enter. Why am I suggesting you be a loner? I have completed many exams by this point. I hate them with a passion. Despite that, across all of my exam experience, this has been my observation. It's almost impossible to be standing with a bunch of friends immediately before an exam and not start talking about that exam. Once you all start talking about the exam, someone will inevitably mention something anxiety-inducing. Your rational brain would ordinarily just ignore that comment because it's just wrong. But because your exam is just about to start, your anxious brain takes over. It thinks, shit, I haven't memorized 153 quotes. That means I'm not going to ace English. If I don't ace English, I won't pass it. And that means I can't get straight into uni. And that means I'll have to do the stat. And that means I'm a failure. And that means my future is over. Okay, while all of those things aren't true, your brain just can't help but think them when it's anxious. All it takes is just one trivial comment and you've entered a distressed state immediately before your exam. So as we wrap up, remember, you can't eliminate stress, but you can control which type you feel. In light of that and how one comment can derail how you're feeling, choose to be a loner, avoid trivial comments, enter a state of eustress, and ultimately just ace the WACE. On the topic of acing the WACE, that's all the main content for the lesson. Let's simply summarize it. First up, we looked at the difference between eustress and distress. We learned that eustress is good stress and distress is bad stress. Importantly, you can't just eliminate stress, but you can control which type you feel. So you can help yourself enter a state of eustress, the one we want, by firstly implementing the EAMS Formula for Optimal Exam Performance, or the EFOP. You can also help yourself get into a state of eustress by following the exam day tips. After we discussed the difference between eustress and distress, we discussed EFOP. EFOP is a foolproof formula you should aim to follow every day while you're preparing for and in the middle of an exam period. Eat 80% whole foods. Sleep at least 7 hours each night. Remember, time in bed does not equal time asleep. And exercise for at least 30 minutes every day. In short, this formula is eat 80, sleep 7, and exercise 30. And doing those 3 things every day equals optimal exam performance. These are the things you need to do every day so your mind and body can get from point A, which is starting a task, to point B, which is completing that task. Remember, the exam day tips are like car accessories. They will make the trip from point A to point B better, but they're useless if the car can't make it to point B in the first place. Eat 80, sleep 7, and exercise 30 helps you get to point B, like these accessories, like these exam day tips. Remember, the overarching purpose of them is to help you enter a state of eustress on the day. So, tip number 1 is one of those things that helps you get into that state. Don't study the night before the exam. This is assuming you're ready for the exam and you're ready for the exam if you've done the lessons and activities. If you're ready but want to do something productive just to make yourself feel at ease the night before, consider reading the goal you set in Module 1, the text tables you completed in Module 2, the EAMS exam strategy, the overarching feedback for the trial run page, and these exam day tips. If you don't feel ready, you can study, provided doing so won't interfere with the EFOP. Tip 2, wake up before 7 a.m. This is assuming you've slept for at least 7 hours, your exam's at 9:20 a.m., and you practice your pre-exam routine before completing the trial run. See guideline 5 from 2 lessons ago. The main point behind this tip is that being in a rush is a surefire way to enter a state of bad stress. As we discussed, this tip helps you go on autopilot before the exam and preserve that precious mental energy. Tip 3, don't study on exam day. If you study on exam day, you're subconsciously telling yourself, I have not developed the skill or skills necessary to complete this exam. Instead of studying, read the goal you set in Module 1, essential, the overarching feedback for the trial run, essential, the EAMS exam strategy, essential, and if you want to, the text tables you completed in Module 2. Tip 4, arrive at the exam venue at least 30 minutes before it starts. Doing this, so 8:50 if the exam starts at 9:20, gives you about 10 minutes to relax before entering the exam room. Tip 5, our final one, just be a loner before the exam starts. If you choose to be a loner, you can avoid trivial comments that might push you down this spiral of what if. So if you avoid those trivial comments, you can enter a state of eustress. Therefore, you can ace the WACE. Finished. Second last lesson. Done. We're close. Plus, even better news, you don't even have any activities for this lesson. That being said, now that you know the EFOP, the English ATAR Made Simple formula for optimal exam performance, I highly recommend you implement it in your life if you aren't already. Once again, that is eating 80, sleeping 7, and exercising 30 every day. Once you've got those things sorted, you are then in the best position possible to get the most out of these 5 exam day tips. So, happy eating, sleeping and exercising, and I look forward to seeing you in the last one. Until then, keep it simple.